The Man Who Solved the Market, by Gregory Zuckerman. Introduction. Imagine for a moment a man lying on a couch in his office, completely defeated. He's just lost a fortune in the markets. His confidence, which once seemed boundless, has shattered. He turns to a young employee, a kid really, and in a moment of raw honesty, he confesses, "Sometimes I look at this and feel I'm just some guy who doesn't really know what he's doing." He then starts talking about a character from an old novel, a man who dreamed of glory but failed miserably, and who ultimately found redemption only in a noble death. The young employee is terrified. He thinks his boss might be contemplating suicide. Now, what if I told you that this man, in his moment of deepest despair, would go on to build the single greatest money-making machine in the history of finance, a machine so powerful, so secretive, and so successful that it would make the strategies of legends like Warren Buffett, George Soros, and Peter Lynch look almost quaint by comparison? This isn't a work of fiction. This is the story of Jim Simons, a mathematician who never took a single finance class, yet managed to solve the market's code. Today, we're diving into the brilliant book, The Man Who Solved the Market, by Gregory Zuckerman. This isn't just a story about money. It's a story about a different way of seeing the world. It's about a man who believed that everything, from the movement of planets to the chaotic frenzy of the stock market, could be understood as a pattern, a signal hidden in the noise. By the end of our time together, you will understand the fundamental philosophy that allowed this brilliant outsider to launch a revolution that has now taken over Wall Street and is quietly shaping our modern world. It's a story of genius, of heartbreak, of unimaginable wealth, and the profound consequences of that power. And it all starts with a 14-year-old kid who was so lost in thought, he couldn't even keep a stockroom organized. Book summary. In the winter of 1952, a young man named Jimmy Simons was working a Christmas job at a garden supply store. His mind, however, wasn't on planting seeds or sheep manure. He was so lost in his own world of numbers and ideas that he kept misplacing everything. Frustrated, the owners demoted him to sweeping the floors. For Jimmy, this felt like a promotion. He thought to himself, "They're paying me to think." When the job ended, the store owners asked him what he wanted to do with his life. He told them, "I want to study mathematics at MIT." They burst out laughing. The kid who couldn't find the fertilizer was going to one of the most prestigious science universities in the world? It seemed hilarious. But young Jimmy Simons wasn't bothered. He had a quiet, unshakable confidence. He came from a supportive family. His mother, Marcia, was incredibly ambitious for him, seeing him as her life's project. His father, Matty, who had to work from a young age and gave up his own career dreams for the family business, gave him a different kind of lesson. He told his son, "Do what you like in life, not what you feel you should do." And what Jimmy liked, more than anything, was to think. He was obsessed with numbers. At age 3, he was figuring out the powers of 2 up to 1024 just for fun. At 4 years old, he puzzled over a classic paradox. As his family drove to the beach, he reasoned that their car could never run out of gas. First, it would use half a tank, then half of the remaining half, and so on, forever approaching empty but never quite reaching it. He had stumbled upon one of Zeno's paradoxes, a problem that had challenged mathematicians for centuries. He knew from a young age he didn't want to be a doctor or a businessman. He just wanted to be a mathematician or a scientist. He didn't really know what that meant, but it sounded like it involved numbers, and that was good enough for him. This wasn't just a love for calculation, it was a love for the elegance of it all, for the beautiful, hidden truths that mathematics could reveal. He would lie down for hours, eyes closed, just pondering problems until he arrived at his own unique solutions. He saw 2 of his professors at MIT, late one night in a cafe, deep in discussion over coffee and cigarettes, surrounded by equations. And he had an epiphany. He thought, "That's the life I want. A life of coffee, cigarettes, and math at all hours." But there was another side to him. A restless, adventurous spirit. After graduating from MIT in just 3 years at the age of 20, he and his friends decided to ride motor scooters from Boston all the way to Buenos Aires, Argentina. They called it Buenos Aires or bust. They slept in abandoned police stations and jungle hammocks, got held up by a hostile mob with machetes in a small Mexican town, and were even thrown in jail before the town's Harvard-educated mayor found out who they were and invited them to a lavish dinner. This was Jim Simons, part brilliant, methodical thinker, part restless adventurer who needed a grand challenge, a seemingly impossible problem to solve. He quickly earned his PhD in mathematics, married young, and dabbled in trading for the first time with a $5,000 wedding gift. He got hooked on the rush of trading soybean futures but soon realized it was a roller coaster of emotion. He told a friend, "This is kind of boring," when his stocks barely moved, but the volatile world of commodities left him both fascinated and unsettled. He put trading aside and settled into the life of a professor, but he felt a familiar restlessness. After just a year of teaching at MIT, he asked his wife, "Is this it? Am I going to do this my whole life? There has to be more." The more he was looking for came from a very unexpected place: the Cold War. In 1964, Simons quit Harvard to join a top-secret intelligence group called the Institute for Defense Analyses, or IDA. This was an elite organization that hired the country's best mathematicians to help the National Security Agency, the NSA, break Russian codes. And this is the most important part of his origin story. At the IDA, Simons wasn't just a mathematician anymore. He was a codebreaker. His job was to look at mountains of seemingly random, meaningless data, intercepted Soviet communications, and find the hidden patterns, the secret messages, the signals in the noise. He learned to develop algorithms, which are just step-by-step instructions for a computer to follow, to test his theories and attack these complex codes. He and his colleagues developed a saying that became their mantra: "Bad ideas is good, good ideas is terrific, no ideas is terrible." It was an idea factory. This was where the foundation of his entire investing philosophy was built. He learned that with enough data, and the right mathematical models, you could find order in what looked like pure chaos. While at the IDA, he and another brilliant codebreaker, a man named Lenny Baum, wrote a classified paper. It wasn't about Russian codes. It was titled Probabilistic Models for and Prediction of Stock Market Behavior. In it, they proposed a radical idea. They argued that the market has underlying states, like a high-variance state where stocks move wildly, or a good state where they generally rise. Now, here's the revolutionary part. They didn't try to figure out why the market was in a certain state. They didn't care about earnings reports, or Federal Reserve announcements, or geopolitical news. Instead, they used sophisticated mathematics, a tool called a hidden Markov model, to analyze the pricing data itself and infer which state the market was in. Think of it like being a poker player. You don't need to know why your opponent is suddenly feeling overconfident or miserable. You just need to recognize their mood from their betting patterns and adjust your strategy to take advantage of it. Simons and Baum were proposing to do the same thing with the entire market. They were saying the whys don't matter. All that matters is identifying the pattern and having a strategy to profit from it. It was an idea decades ahead of its time. But it was just a theory, a classified paper locked away inside a government research group. Simons' time at the IDA came to an abrupt end. He was a vocal opponent of the Vietnam War, and after writing a letter to the New York Times arguing against it, he told a Newsweek reporter he was essentially going on a personal strike, focusing only on his own math research until the war ended. He was 29 and a bit of a wise guy, as he later admitted. His bosses weren't amused. He was fired. Getting fired turned out to be a good thing. It led him to become the chairman of the math department at Stony Brook University, where he built a world-class department from almost nothing by recruiting killers, academics with a single-minded focus to solve a problem. But by 1978, at the age of 40, the familiar restlessness returned. He'd conquered the world of theoretical math. He'd been a star cryptologist. He'd built a top university department. He needed a new, bigger challenge. He decided to leave the quiet, respected world of academia to do something his colleagues found baffling, even a little distasteful. He was going to play the market full-time. One mathematician later said, "We looked down on him, like he had been corrupted and had sold his soul to the devil." But Simons was confident. He had spent years trying to master the market's chaos, and he was sure he could conquer it. He was about to find out just how hard that would be. He set up shop in a dreary strip mall, next to a pizza joint and a women's clothing boutique. He named his new firm Monometrics, a combination of money and econometrics, signaling his intent to use math to beat the market. His plan was to put that old IDA theory into practice. He just needed the right partner. He called his old code-breaking colleague, Lenny Baum. At first, Baum was skeptical. He knew nothing about trading and cared so little about it that his wife managed the family's finances. But Simons showed him charts of currency prices, and Baum, the pattern finder, saw something. He saw structure. He quit his job at the IDA and joined Simons full-time. Soon after, another brilliant mathematician from Stony Brook, James Axe, joined them. Simons was ecstatic. He had two of the world's most acclaimed mathematicians working with him to unlock the market's secrets. And for a little while, they were unstoppable. They made a fortune betting on the British pound, correctly predicting that Margaret Thatcher couldn't hold its value down for long. The money was pouring in. But the market is a cruel teacher, and it was about to give these geniuses a brutal lesson in humility. Their first big mistake was trying to trade like everyone else. Instead of sticking to their models, they started relying on intuition and gut feelings, the very things their system was supposed to eliminate. Lenny Baum, an optimist by nature, loved to buy and hold on forever, convinced things would always go up. This worked until it didn't. During the gold rush of 1980, as prices skyrocketed past $800 an ounce, Simons saw people lining up to sell their gold jewelry. He panicked, realizing a flood of supply was about to hit the market. He screamed at Baum, "Sell the fucking gold, Lenny." Baum refused, convinced the trend would continue. Simons eventually forced him to sell, but the conflict created a deep rift between them. A few years later, in 1984, Baum made a massive, stubborn bet on U.S. bonds that went horribly wrong. The losses were so catastrophic they triggered a clause in his contract, forcing Simons to liquidate all of Baum's positions and end their partnership. The emotional roller coaster of trading had claimed its first victim. Simons himself wasn't doing much better. He had tried to build a fully automated trading system, which the team nicknamed the piggy basket because it had live hogs as one of its components. For a while, it worked beautifully. Then, one day, the system developed a strange and insatiable appetite for Maine potatoes. It bought so many potato futures contracts that regulators called Simons, alarmed that his tiny firm was about to corner the global potato market. The regulators forced him to sell, costing him millions. He and Baum couldn't even figure out why their computer wanted so many potatoes. They lost faith in the system. This brings us back to that moment of despair on the couch. By then, Baum was gone, and the firm's trading was in shambles. The losses were stomach-wrenching, he told a friend. There's no rhyme or reason. He confessed to his young programmer, Greg Hoolander, that he felt like he didn't know what he was doing. It seemed his grand experiment was a failure. But Simons didn't quit. He emerged from his funk more determined than ever. He told a colleague, "I don't want to have to worry about the market every minute. I want models that will make money while I sleep. A pure system without humans interfering." He was done with gut feelings, with intuition, with human emotion. He was going back to the original plan, a pure, mathematical, automated system. He just needed to find the right people to build it. And that's when two names surfaced from the world of computer science, two researchers at IBM who were working on something that seemed completely unrelated to finance, teaching computers how to understand human speech. Their names were Peter Brown and Robert Mercer. Peter Brown was charming, creative, and energetic. Robert Mercer was his opposite, a tall, quiet, socially awkward genius who hummed classical tunes around the office and ate the same sandwich for lunch every single day. They were working on speech recognition, trying to get computers to transcribe spoken language. And they were using the exact same mathematical tools that Simons and Baum had theorized about back at the IDA, hidden Markov models and the Baum-Welch algorithm. They saw speech as a chaotic stream of data. The job of their program was to listen to the sounds, crunch the probabilities, and make the best possible guess about the hidden words that generated those sounds. It was another form of finding signals in the noise. In 1993, after a series of personal tragedies left Mercer rethinking his life, and Brown grew frustrated with the bureaucracy at IBM, they made a call to a quirky little hedge fund on Long Island run by a former mathematician. They joined Renaissance Technologies. This was the turning point. This was the moment the dream team was finally assembled. Brown and Mercer took the struggling stock trading system that Simon's firm had been working on and completely rebuilt it. They treated the market just like they had treated language at IBM. The old system was good at generating trade ideas, but it kept failing in the real world. It would recommend buying a stock that wasn't available, or it would use too much leverage, forcing a human to override it. These small errors would cascade, throwing the whole system out of balance. Brown and Mercer's genius was to build a single, monolithic, self-correcting system. It took into account all the real-world constraints, trading costs, leverage limits, risk parameters, and optimized the portfolio in real time. If a recommended trade couldn't be executed, the system didn't crash, it automatically self-corrected, searching for the next best set of trades to get the portfolio back to where it needed to be. It was adaptive. It was a learning machine. But even this brilliant new system had a flaw. A tiny, almost invisible bug buried deep in the code. For months, the system was bleeding money, and no one could figure out why. The pressure was immense. The older researchers on the futures trading side, who were still making a fortune, whispered that the new guys were just computer guys, not real mathematicians. The hero of this chapter of the story is a young, insecure, and brilliant programmer named David Magerman. He had just been hired from IBM and was desperate to prove himself. He was also the guy who had crashed the entire firm's computer network a few weeks after starting, making him a temporary outcast. Working through the night, his eyes blurry from staring at the screen, Magerman found it. A single line of code was using a static, outdated number for the SAN B500 from 1991. It wasn't updating with the market. It was a simple, stupid mistake, but it was throwing everything off. He fixed the bug. And instantly, the system started making money. The long losing streak was over. The machine finally worked. From that point on, Renaissance Technologies became unstoppable. They built what is now the most legendary and secretive hedge fund in the world, the Medallion Fund. They hired a team of eccentrics, astronomers who were used to finding faint signals in cosmic data, computational linguists from IBM, and statisticians. But they famously did not hire anyone from Wall Street or with a finance background. Patterson, their head of recruitment, said, "We can teach you about money. We can't teach you about smart." They created a culture of radical openness inside the firm. Every single line of the source code for their money-making algorithms was available for any employee to see and experiment with. They had a single unified trading model, encouraging everyone to collaborate and share ideas, knowing that their bonuses were tied to the performance of the entire fund, not their individual projects. Their strategy evolved. They weren't just looking for simple trends anymore. They were looking for what they called multi-dimensional anomalies, subtle, complex mathematical relationships between hundreds of different factors, forces that were hidden to almost everyone else. They realized that investors are not rational. They are driven by fear, greed, and a whole host of cognitive biases. A researcher at the firm explained their premise: what you're really modeling is human behavior. Humans are most predictable in times of high stress. They act instinctively and panic. We learn to take advantage. They didn't need to be right all the time. In fact, their system was only profitable on barely more than 50% of its trades. But by making tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands, of trades a day, that tiny edge was enough. They were the house in the casino, and the law of large numbers was on their side. The results were staggering. From 1988 to 2018, the Medallion Fund generated average annual returns of 66% before fees and 39% after fees. They racked up trading profits of over $100 billion. To put that in perspective, Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway averaged around 20% over a similar period. Simons and his team were in a league of their own. But this incredible success came with a new set of problems. The firm became a victim of its own genius. Their short-term trading strategies were so effective that they couldn't manage too much money without moving the market against themselves. Simons decided to cap the Medallion Fund at around $10 billion, and, in 2003, he did something unprecedented. He kicked all outside investors out, making it a private fund exclusively for the firm's employees. The money pouring in was almost incomprehensible. Researchers were making tens of millions of dollars a year. A quiet area on Long Island became known as the Renaissance Riviera as employees bought up mansions. The parking lot, once filled with old Toyotas and Saturns, started to see more Porsches and Mercedes. And this is where the story takes its final, dramatic turn. What happens when a machine designed to generate wealth works almost too well? What do the creators of that machine do with all that power? For Jim Simons, who had tragically lost two of his sons in separate accidents, the answer was philanthropy. He stepped down as CEO in 2010 and poured billions into his foundation, tackling some of the biggest scientific challenges of our time, funding research to cure autism and building a massive new observatory in Chile to search for the origins of the universe. He had solved the market. Now he was on to bigger problems. But for his co-CEO, the quiet, eccentric Robert Mercer, the answer was very different. Over the years, Mercer had developed intensely conservative and libertarian political views. He had a deep-seated hostility toward the government, a view he traced back to a frustrating summer job at an Air Force base in his youth. He believed the Civil Rights Act had been a mistake that infantilized African Americans. He, along with his politically ambitious daughter Rebecca, began to use their immense fortune to reshape American politics. They invested in a fledgling media outlet called Breitbart News, run by an agitator named Steve Bannon. They funded Cambridge Analytica, a data firm that controversially used the private Facebook data of millions of people to build psychological profiles for political targeting. And in 2016, they became the single biggest financial backers of a long-shot presidential candidate, Donald Trump. When Trump's campaign was collapsing in the summer of 2016, it was the Mercers who intervened, convincing him to hire Steve Bannon and Kellyanne Conway to stabilize the operation. Their money and their strategic influence were, by many accounts, the critical factors that put Trump in the White House. This created an unprecedented crisis inside the secretive walls of Renaissance. Jim Simons, a lifelong Democrat, was one of Hillary Clinton's biggest donors. His firm was now run by the man most responsible for her defeat. The conflict came to a head through David Magerman, the same programmer who had saved the trading system years earlier. Magerman, who was horrified by Trump and Mercer's politics, felt personally responsible. He told his wife, "I've made software that makes white rich guys like Mercer even richer." He decided to speak out. He gave an explosive interview to the Wall Street Journal, publicly calling out his boss. He was immediately suspended and, after a dramatic, drunken confrontation with Rebecca Mercer at a charity poker tournament, he was fired. The controversy grew. Protesters started showing up outside Renaissance's offices. Key employees threatened to quit, telling Simons they could no longer work for a company whose leader was bankrolling a political agenda they found abhorrent. The morale of the firm was collapsing. Finally, Simons had to act. In November 2017, Robert Mercer stepped down as co-CEO of Renaissance Technologies, though he remained at the firm as a researcher. The political storm had finally breached the walls of the world's most secretive hedge fund. In the end, Jim Simons, the man who started it all, had learned a difficult lesson. He had spent his life building a machine to operate free from human emotion and irrationality. And for decades, it worked better than anyone could have imagined. But he discovered that no matter how powerful your algorithms are, you can't model away the messy, unpredictable, and powerful consequences of what humans do with the wealth and power that machine creates. He solved the market, but the human element remained the most complex variable of all. Commentary. When you step back and look at the story of Jim Simons and Renaissance Technologies, it's easy to get lost in the mind-boggling numbers, the billions of dollars, the 66% annual returns. But if you look closer, I think the most powerful lesson in this book has nothing to do with money. It's about a fundamental shift in how we can approach solving incredibly complex problems. For centuries, the heroes of the investment world were savants, people like Warren Buffett or George Soros, who seemed to have a magical intuition, an almost superhuman ability to see the future. Their success reinforced a powerful idea, that mastering a complex field requires gut feelings, experience, and a kind of artistic genius. Jim Simons' story offers a radical alternative. His core belief was that human intuition, even the intuition of a genius, is fundamentally flawed. We are all ruled by cognitive biases, by fear, by greed, by overconfidence. We see patterns where none exist, and we miss the ones that are right in front of us. His solution was to build a system. A system that was disciplined, data-driven, and, most importantly, free from human emotion. He didn't try to predict the future in one grand, heroic bet. Instead, his machine made thousands of tiny, statistically backed bets, knowing that it only had to be right a little more than 50% of the time to win big in the long run. This is a profound idea that goes far beyond Wall Street. In any area of your life where you're trying to make better decisions, whether it's your health, your career, or your personal habits, the Renaissance story suggests that relying on a consistent system is almost always more effective than relying on willpower or momentary inspiration. It's about trusting the process, not your mood. So, here's a simple, practical way to apply this lesson today. Think of one area in your life where you'd like to improve. Instead of just trying harder, try being a scientist for a week. Just collect data. Don't judge it, just observe. Track what you eat, or how you spend your time, or when you feel most energized. At the end of the week, look at the data. You might just discover a hidden pattern, a signal in the noise of your own life that you never noticed before. That discovery is the first step to building your own system for success. The story of the man who solved the market is more than just a financial thriller. It's a testament to the power of curiosity, the discipline of the scientific method, and the humility to accept that a well-designed system can often see the world more clearly than we can. It's a reminder that sometimes, the greatest breakthroughs come not from having all the answers, but from learning how to ask the right questions and then trusting the data to guide you. That was the book summary of The Man Who Solved the Market by Gregory Zuckerman. We've certainly hit the highlights today, but I'll be honest with you, a summary can only take you so far. The real magic happens when you read the book yourself. It's in the quiet moments when a particular story or a simple phrase hits you in a way you didn't expect. This summary is designed to help you decide if this book is worth your time. If anything we've talked about today has resonated with you, grab a copy, because reading it isn't just learning, it's an experience that can genuinely change the way you see the world of finance and human decision-making. The link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next journey into another life-changing book from the billionaire's bookshelf. Let's keep growing together.